Welcome to Techzine.tv.
Welcome to a new episode of Techzine TV. We're still at HPE Discover, and we're talking to two guests today, Robin Braun and Arijit Sengupta. We're going to talk about AI, I believe, Sander.
Oh yeah, sure. Let's first introduce the guest on the show. Maybe that would be interesting. Welcome to the show.
Welcome.
Thank you. Delighted to be here.
Welcome, Robin. You work at HPE?
Yes, so I'm the Vice President of AI Business Development at HPE. My background, actually, I've been working in AI from a number of different perspectives, which I think helps to strengthen what I can bring now in leading the AI Unleash AI program for HPE. So I've worked with ISVs, I've worked in the channel, and I've been at an OEM. So we're kind of across that over the last number of years, and working with, of course, our partners in NVIDIA. It just is so exciting to be at this point and now really unleashing AI with our partners.
Well, Unleashing AI. Oh, that's funny you should mention that because you have a program called Unleash AI, right?
Amazing how
And
that works.
and you are with Aible. You are part of that program, right?
Yes, I'm Arijit Sengupta, the founder and CEO of Aible. Before this, I started something called Beyond Core, which became Salesforce Einstein Discovery. Actually wrote a book called AI is a Waste of Money based on 1,000 AI projects I had done at the time. And I'll tell you why they failed and why
Interesting that you're now in
started
the
Aible up because
AI
of that.
space still.
And that led to the Harvard Business School bringing me back in to co-create and co-teach the first AI course in the MBA program at Harvard. So what I found was most AI projects failed because business users and data scientists don't talk to each other. And so the whole idea of Aible and the tagline, I am Aible, was how do you make it possible for business users themselves to make their own AI? And that has been our crucial focus area.
Because that's something that is seems far fetched to many people, right? Because business users are not seen as the people who actually develop and build AI.
That is the toughest part of the
Yeah.
problem, that fear of the unknown. So we actually did something really fun recently. Actually, 2 weeks back, we went to the state of Nebraska and we took a bunch of interns and employees, and actually the CIO and the CDO of the state of Nebraska themselves, gave them 30 minutes of training. They had never used the product before. They'd never been trained on it before. And like they generated multiple agents, like something like 30, 40 agents in a span of 30 minutes.
Yeah.
And that is the important part, is get people comfortable that they can make these things on their own data, on structured, unstructured image data.
Not building the agents themselves or with
Yes.
AI as well, because building 30, 40 agents in 30 minutes, it sounds like a lot.
No, but that's the important point, is that this kind of technology, the AI should assist the human in creating the AI, right? So if the human has to write code, you can't get this done in 30 minutes.
No.
If all they're doing is the AI is understanding what they're trying to achieve and guiding them there, and then the human is saying, you got that wrong. You got their definition wrong. Like, just fix this one part, and it immediately fixes itself. Then after one or two iterations, we are right there.
Yeah.
And some of these guys were deliberately trying to break the AI. So that was actually fun. Like, they were trying to make it break. And sometimes it broke, but we knew why it broke. But most of the time, again, 80% of the time, people were able to build the agent they wanted.
I want to get back to the Unleash AI part, right? This question, two questions. Why did HPE start it? What's the added value of that program because why didn't you do all of the AI development yourself, right? And the second one is, why did Aible join? Did they want to join that program?
I think one of the important things around Unleash AI is that there's so much amazing innovation happening in AI, and with companies like Aible, and that thinking that we could just capture all of that on our own would be rather foolhardy. The amazing innovation, being on that cutting edge, really understanding and engaging and understanding what the customer is trying to do is just fantastic to tap into and create that ecosystem. Now, the reason we created Unleash AI is that our core competency is making fantastic infrastructure. And then we've created the private cloud for AI, or PCAI, where we've made that incredibly easy for IT to support and have that supported in an ongoing fashion. But what really brings it to life for our customers is, we've packaged blueprints and NIMs on it, and that's great for them to be able to experiment. But being able to then have partners such as Aible or others who are in the program be able to install on top of that infrastructure and create that last mile,
Yeah.
bring the total solution
Yeah. So,
into
so
it.
to be clear, the program is aimed at ISVs, right?
Yes.
So people that companies like Able that can build on top of whatever HPE is throwing
Right.
at the market, basically, right? Yeah.
Yeah, where we're providing that integrated AI stack that Able and others can build on top of. And what I think is so important about it is that it gives the customer the ability to a much faster implementation, and also where they're not having to do experimentation and integration on their own, but where they can actually focus, like he was talking about, on the what are they actually trying to solve and how much more quickly can they do it, and they can do it in a secure fashion using their own data, all of those things. But it allows them across different use cases to be able to leapfrog from where they are to where they want to get to.
Yeah. And from your perspective, why did you want to be part of this? I mean, obviously, go to market, I think.
Yeah, no, but there's two key parts to it. So first, think about the PCAI part. As Robin was saying, being pre-tested, pre-secure, pre-optimized, so that we actually are not, from our perspective, we are not surprised by the platform we are running it. Because that becomes the issue. In Fortune 50, we have a lot of Fortune 50 customers.
Mhm.
Everyone's platform is different. So you end up having to deal with a lot of complexity.
Yeah.
Here, we are dealing with the complexity upfront, testing the end-to-end solution, then going to the customer, bring it up like that, right? The only reason you can bring it up that fast and this total solutioning is because of all that heavy lifting that gets done upfront. And the other part of this is, as we started talking to the CIOs and CDOs about this, anybody can build an AI. Their two key fears was, one was, what's going to happen to my data? What about data security? Where is this going?
Yeah.
Who gets access to it? Other was, how unpredictable will be the cost? And this is where PCAI and Unleashed AI program actually comes into play, because the whole platform has been secured. So you know your data is not leaving PCAI.
Mhm.
You're fine-tuning data, all of the fine-tuning, everything is happening right there, right?
You're running all the AI models on
Everything
Right.
on that box, right? Nothing leaves that PCI instance. And the second part of it is from a cost perspective, because the models are running there, our licensing is set up as a per platform kind of pricing as well. There is no unpredictability to the cost. It's not growing by usage, it's not growing by the number of users. Now, of course, if you are getting so successful that you're using up the capacity of that instance, you go to PCAI and say, hey, HPE, can I get a bigger instance, please? Or can I get two of those, please? But it's not unpredictable.
No.
That's what CIOs are worried about, is I get into an AI program and suddenly there's a $3 million model bill
Yeah.
that I was not anticipating.
But do you still offer your platform on other stacks as well? And I would imagine yes. I
Of
mean,
course.
Absolutely.
but does it fundamentally change what you can offer to various companies, whether you take it on the PCAI stack or on your existing stack?
Right. So our approach is we can run on whatever stack the customer wants. But what has been fun with PCAI is that pre-integration, pre-testing,
I understand
making
that. Yeah.
sure that optimization, and for different sizes. So there are different configurations of PCAI, and you have to test on the different configurations. Once you have done that, you know that it'll work and it'll work well. The problem that happens in many of these other platforms is there's unpredictability because the customers have adjusted these platforms in such a way that you can't walk into a customer and say, I can predictably give you this performance for sure.
No.
But
No,
there
but-
are hundreds of models you can run on-prem, usually smaller models, less well known.
Yeah.
People know the bigger models that are all cloud-based.
Mhm.
How far are these smaller models to help organizations achieve results with agents?
Right. So at NVIDIA's GTC conference, we actually did a bunch of benchmarks with Llama as one of the open source models, and we support many of them.
Yeah.
Once you fine tune it to the customer's use case, they actually dominate large models. Think of large models as generalists, like they know a little bit about everything. And in fact, they're very good at taking tests. So they're just really good at taking the test, right?
Yep.
So when you apply to a real customer's data that model has never seen, it actually struggles. It performs really badly. This has been one of the issues in the enterprise. And what the small model does is we made it possible for the user to provide feedback to the model saying, you understood this word wrong. This word means this in my world, right?
Yeah.
And it learns from it and it immediately adjusts. And within about 150 feedback, it got much better than the large models. So it's much more cost efficient much more secure. But once you customize it just that little bit, it's actually much better than the bigger models.
And you can do that pretty fast, right? Those
Yeah.
150
In those 30
feedbacks.
minutes,
Yeah.
in those 30 minutes, because what happens is as the user is giving feedback, you're immediately improving the model in the short term. Once you get 150, you run the fine-tuning job. The fine-tuning job might take minutes. It doesn't take hours because
Mhm.
small amount of data, and already it's better than the large models for that use case.
And from an HPE perspective, did you see partnerships like this, or the program with the outcomes like this? Did you see that accelerating the adoption of the stack that's underneath this as well? What can you tell me about?
That definitely is, part of the excitement around being able to create that total solution like we were talking about, and with kind of what you're talking about, that art of the how, that we're not just talking about the art of the possible,
Mhm.
is that we're really showing people and being able to say this is the art of the how and how you can actually get started. And yes, in the end, if we can help people use more, then they'll use more. That's fantastic for all. But I think, the real passion that I have for it is that how can we help people be successful?
Mhm.
So many people are struggling, and then like you were saying, all of a sudden they have this like huge bill because they didn't realize like the number of tokens they were going to use in the cloud.
Yeah.
And then they're like, well, we can't use AI to do this. Well, no, you can, but there's just a different and better way to do it. And that I think is why I get so passionate about what we're doing is it's not just saying, here's a bunch of ISVs, but here are a bunch of partners who can help our customers really achieve those goals they're trying to do
Yeah.
in a much smarter way.
But I think from a customer perspective, usually there's a cost thing always, right? So look, if they have their own stack and they say, well, why don't I just run it on my own stack? And but you say, look, if you do it like this, it's much more integrated. It will give you better results. But I'm assuming that the upfront cost of doing it on your stack is higher than if you're doing it on your existing stack. How do you navigate that kind of discussion on ROI and TCO?
The ROI, we find what we're putting forward to be more cost effective than a number of the stacks that they already have today. And also, when you can start to look at the ROI, not just for the infrastructure, but for the entire total, it becomes even more compelling. And when you look at, and what I really think is important for customers to consider is we all talk about like first time to insight, and we
Yeah.
talk about that time, and that's really important time. But how does IT, how do the people who are keeping the technology lights on for each of our enterprise customers, how do they support this on a daily basis? And that's why we work with such great partners like Able and others, but also look at how does IT support this as a total? And that by having that pre-integrated, the ROI is not just day one in your purchase,
No.
but what is it over the 3 years?
I know, but
and
I
that
mean
support.
that's always the
Yeah.
hardest part of the discussion, right? Because
Yeah.
people look at what am I paying today or day one,
Right.
and then you need to have a good story around that as well.
One of the other parts that we didn't go into is there is a third partner that's also here, which is NVIDIA,
Yep.
right? So we work very closely with NVIDIA and closely with HPE. But the result of that is we are really optimizing to that hardware, right? And quite often, if you look at what are the solutions in the market, they're actually very general purpose. Are coming out of science projects that hasn't gone into that obsessive optimization yet as it executes in the enterprise. Right? The exceptions to it, but quite often you'll find
Yeah.
there's a lot of development work, a lot of IT consulting work before a solution becomes real. Anytime you're doing that kind of stuff, you're not optimizing it to the crazy extent you can when you have HPE, NVIDIA, and the Ables of the world working together to
Yeah.
get that optimization.
And just to sort of work towards the end here, if you had to give advice to companies watching this and say, well, I want to start my AI journey, but I have no clue where to start. Apart from investing in a full stack, which obviously you would love them to do, but I mean, so a bit more conceptually, what would be the first steps that you have to take to actually go down the right path for you?
Well,
Want to go first?
yeah, if I would say where I always start those conversations with customers is what is keeping them up at night? Like what are they worried about that is keeping them from achieving their mission, from being kind of the best version of themselves? Is that efficiency in a particular area? Is it the time it's taking for a particular cycle of something? Like what is it that in their end-to-end process that's keeping them up at night, that's not letting them kind of move to that next level, whatever that is. And how do we start to unpack that? But that you don't have to. And I always use a phrase, and people normally laugh at me, but that's okay. I'm used to it. Is that like go mud puddle by mud puddle? Because people will try to like boil the ocean. And I'm like, start with a mud puddle. And then like you can go to your next mud puddle. And after a while, you can get a decent sized lake going. But if you look at that entire piece at once, like you can be overwhelmed and you can try to do too much, which won't set them up for success than if they take just a part of the problem and start there and grow.
And the trick obviously is to define your mud puddles.
Yeah,
So that's
exactly.
and that's not necessarily easy either, right? So this requires a lot of thinking before the fact instead of
Well, no, only if you think you have to define the mud puddle yourself. See, what we are doing is taking what Robin's saying and taking it to the next level, which is why not 1,000 mud puddles, right? Why not? If you actually empower the end users who have to use these solutions, what we find is constantly they come up with solutions we would have never thought of. Like I just had a customer where they found a $12 million ROI project. If anybody had told me that they were going after that project, I would have told them, don't do it. It's a stupid idea. It turned out there was $12 million of value there. What did I know?
yeah.
Because the end user working on it knew their problem way better than the technologist does, right? And this is, I think, the most important thing to understand is that this market is going down the wrong path, thinking you have to define a use case first.
Yeah.
They're going down we always fight the last war. People are still fighting the IT application development war.
Yep.
This is like if you told people, before you use a browser, come up with the use case for using the browser, and an expert has to create a custom browser for you.
Yeah.
Makes no sense.
No.
What you want is, if you're going to have thousands of agents, which is very obvious that enterprises will need thousands, you cannot get to it one by one. You need a machine gun, not a bow and arrow.
Yeah.
So stop aiming, stop trying to get it right, find a way to get 1,000 shots on target. That's why we're obsessively focused on how do you get to 1,000 agents. Doesn't have to be in production, but just build 1,000 agents.
Yeah, and then you need the speed that you actually
Right.
can offer to actually
Exactly.
build them very quickly. Yeah.
So last week, we did a podcast with NVIDIA, which was with the chief digital officer of CVS Health. So Fortune 50, one of the largest companies. He was talking about exactly this, like how he has empowered his employees with Aible so that they can rapid prototype stuff. Doesn't mean all the prototypes have to win. But what
No.
does happen is
But
you get
yeah.
a lot of prototypes
Yeah.
going and then some succeed.
But this is a large enterprise play at the end of the day, right? Because a lot of smaller companies may not be able to have this sort of center of excellence approach to
You
this.
don't need a
So-
complex center of excellence. That's the key thing. Because that's what we wanted to show when we got these interns at State of Nebraska trained and going in 30 minutes. This is not a complicated, let's send people to school kind of a thing. This is do they have 30 minutes to an hour? And then they get comfortable and can they build 5 of them, 10 of them, and see what happens.
Okay. But do you think people lie awake how to do AI?
I do. That's what they tell me.
Or should they lie awake if they're not? Because AI is a game changer, but many organizations still try to avoid it for some reason.
I think the fear factor, and certainly Hollywood has done a good job showing us the nefarious options of AI out there. But I would say that what you see, and you see kind of the quotes out there of you're not necessarily going to lose your job to AI, but you're going to lose your job to someone who is using AI, and that's the same when you think about a business. And it was one of those when you think about when refrigeration came in and the people who delivered ice at that time, they had to make a change in what they were doing because their job wasn't actually to provide ice. Their job was actually to help people keep food cold. That is when you start to think about what is your actual mission and what are you trying to achieve? And then what are the things that are preventing you from getting there? And like you were saying, you can go at such rapid prototyping speed now to start to see, we always talked about fail fast. I'm like, you can actually succeed fast too. And that just being able to start to see what you can do. I always talk about like, let's make it tangible. Let's make it practical and tactical. Let's start to see what you can do, talk about the art of the how. And then when you start to break down those barriers, it's not nearly so scary anymore.
To a great extent, it's because the execs haven't done these things themselves.
Yep.
So when we did the Nebraska thing, we did something funny. The CIO and the CDO didn't know they were going to get trained. They had shown up thinking this is for the interns and the staff. And we said, no, you guys got to do it. So in the middle of the training, the CIO, who I know very well, he, instead of doing training, we had some sample data sets. He just went into the state of Nebraska's own data, like their employee guidance, because he had access to it. And he's like, we are working with them, like, your answers don't match anyone else's because we're teaching them. It's like, oh yeah, I use the real stuff. So he, instead of doing training, with the training, he's building his own agent. Now, what does that mean? That means that he can confidently go to any agency head and say, if I can do this, you can do this. There's nothing to be afraid of.
Yeah. I think that's a good way to
wrap up.
end this, because don't be afraid of it. I mean,
Yeah.
don't listen to Hollywood. Listen to this side of, because these types of videos are much more interesting in terms of AI than Hollywood is.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Thank you for joining us on Techzine TV. Thank you for watching, and we'll be back with more from HPE Discover.
Thank you for watching Techzine TV, the channel about enterprise technology that brings you IT insights and analyses from events all around the globe. We cover everything, everywhere. Visit techzine.eu for more written in-depth articles and analysis, or keep watching techzine.tv. Don't forget to subscribe to our channels and share your favorite videos with your colleagues. We'll see you soon.